So on this day, on Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day yesterday, because Gopal Bhatta Goswami, we know the story of he went and got Sheelas. He had 12 Sheelas which came to him, and he used to carry them in a white cloth everywhere, tied. They had a knot in it, and he would carry them around. And at one stage, a rich devotee of disciple gave him a lot of cloth and jewellery. So he was a little bit, he actually said to this devotee, "Can you please take it somewhere else, because I just have shalagrams. I can't use the fancy cloth and I can't use the ornaments." So, but on Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day yesterday, he was praying in lamentation. He was thinking, "My Lord, you're always merciful to your devotees, my dear Lord Nrsinga. If only I could have worship you in your personal form with your beautiful face, your beautiful arms and legs, that would make me very happy." So he fasted all day and he took rest, and then got up in the morning today and took his bath, and he uncovered his deities. He used to cover them with a basket every night, his shalagrams, and there was this most beautiful form of Radharaman. A threefold bending form, very beautiful. He's very captivating deity, so very perfectly formed. And everyone was in ecstasy, of course, when the other Goswamis came, and they all took darshan. There was a huge festival, and to this day there's a big festival on this day in Vrindavan. They cook up, they use 500 litres of milk, and they make all sorts of sweets and savouries and offer them to Sri Radharamanji. Jai. And then we have 3 devotees. Today is the disappearance day of Parameshwar Das Thakur. So Parameshwar Das Thakur is one of Lord Nityananda's associates, and he's a very auspicious devotee. He came to assist Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and he was very surrendered, completely surrendered to Lord Nityananda. If you just remember his name, Parameshwar Das Thakur, if anybody would like to say, Parameshwar Das Thakur, Parameshwar Das Thakur, now you will easily get love of Govinda. Or if you remember his pastimes. So he was in incarnation of the cowherd boy Arjuna, not the warrior Arjuna. And we know that 12 special devotees came to assist Lord Nityananda, so he was very much involved in Lord Nityananda's pastimes. He went with him when Lord Nityananda was sent by Lord Chaitanya to go to Bengal. Parameshwar Das Thakur went with him. And he was there at Panihati. He observed the whole Panihati pastime. He actually was there at the first Gaur Purnima of Narottam Das Thakur. That was a very big festival in Kateri. And he travelled with Lord Nityananda around Bengal preaching. So once Lord Nityananda left, he took shelter under Janavamata, and Janavamata advised him and helped him in his spiritual life. And she sent him at one stage to Vrindavan with a Radharani deity to go with Govindadev, because Govindadev was there but he had no Radharani, so it was Parameshwar Das Thakur who took that deity to Vrindavan. And interestingly enough, there's a little bit of a crossover, because another great soul that appeared today is Srinivas Acharya. And when Srinivas Acharya went to see Janavamata, it was actually Parameshwar Das Thakur that took him in for darshan. So he was very sort of connected with a lot of the wonderful pastimes that happened around this time. In the end, Janavamata sent him to a place called Antwar and asked him to go preach there. He established a temple there, and I think that's Radha Gopinath Temple. Yeah, Radha Gopinath Temple. Those deities were actually given to him by Janavamata, so he worshipped them there. And it's described that one time all the devotees were having a big kirtan, very ecstatic kirtan, and some miscreants were there, and there was a dead jackal on the side of the road, so they threw this dead jackal into the middle of the kirtan. So So Parameshwara, they just went on, the devotees just kept on ecstatically chanting, but Parameshwara Das Thakur felt sorry for that jackal. So he brought that jackal back to life, and he made the jackal chant Hare Krishna. So the miscreants were absolutely shocked, and they ran away. So wonderful powers he had. And his samadhi is outside the gate of that temple. And it's described that nearby is a kadamba tree, and it gives one flower a year. And that's used to worship Radha Govinda deities. Okay, so then we move on to Sri Madhavindrapuri. So Madhavindrapuri was renounced, it's his appearance day. So it's not known, I looked up so many places, it's not actually known whereabouts he made his appearance, but he was renounced at a very young age. He was always very renounced, and he took sannyas very early. And there's a nice description. He was like always absorbed in love of Godhead, spectacularly absorbed. It's described he didn't know if it was day or night. He was so ecstatic. And there's a nice, little pastime when he meets Lord Nityananda. And so Lord Nityananda was travelling around the holy places, as was Madhavindrapuri. So, as Lord Nityananda travelled by the will of Providence, he met Sri Madhavindrapuri. The body of Sri Madhavindrapuri was imbued with ecstatic love of God, and his followers shared the same sentiments. He didn't relish anything other than loving sentiments for Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna enjoyed pastimes in the body of Madhavindrapuri. What can I say about the devotion of he who was the spiritual master of Sri Advaita Acharya? Seeing Madhavindrapuri, Nityananda at once fell unconscious on the ground, stunned in ecstatic prema. Seeing Lord Nityananda, Madhavindrapuri forgot himself and also fell unconscious. Sri Gaurachandra repeatedly said that Sri Madhavindrapuri is the original root of worship in ecstatic love. After both Lord Nityananda and Madhavindrapuri swooned, the disciples, headed by Ishwarapuri, began to cry. Recovering after some time, Lord Nityananda and Madhavindrapuri embraced each other and cried. Overwhelmed by ecstatic love of Krishna, they rolled on the sand and cried out loudly. The tears of love flowing from their eyes, like rain, soaked Mother Earth, making her feel gratified. Shivering, shedding of tears, and the hairs of their bodies were standing on end, as well as many other ecstatic symptoms were manifesting themselves one after another endlessly. This ecstasy was caused by Lord Krishna personally residing in their bodies. So we know that Krishna's in all our hearts, but personally Krishna, that's as the Parameshwara, but personally Krishna was residing in the bodies of these great devotees. So Nityananda Prabhu travelled for some time with Madhavindrapuri, relishing Krishna Katha. The qualities of Madhavindrapuri were most wonderful. He would swoon just by seeing a dark cloud. Out of love for Krishna, he laughed and cried throughout the day and night, like a drunkard. So Chaitanya Charitamrita has some very nice stories about Sri Madhavindrapuri. When he came to Govinda Kund, Madhavindrapuri was such a sannyasi. There are different sort of classes of sannyasi. So some of them will go and beg, and that's allowed for a sannyasi, that's expected. But Sri Madhavindrapuri never begged, and there are some that never beg. If something comes to them, they'll eat. Otherwise, they won't eat. They'll just lie down where they are and just absorb in the holy name. And they have to fast many times because they don't always get their sustenance. But that was Madhavindrapuri's kind of vow. He would never beg. So he went to Govinda Kund and he chanted and he fasted that day. And then suddenly this beautiful cowherd boy came to him and he asked him, why don't you beg? What is your meditation? Who are you? Where are you from? And Madhavendrapuri asked him, how do you know that I didn't beg and that I haven't eaten? He said, in my village nobody fasts. He said, I supply all eatables if someone doesn't beg. The women who came to gather water from the well, they saw you and they sent me to see you. So please, drink this milk and I'll come back and get the pot later. So Madhavindrapuri was amazed at this beautiful boy, and he drank the milk and he kept the pot for the cowherd boy when he returned. But he didn't come back. So he began to chant in the night, and towards the end of the night he just dozed. He was sitting up, he was chanting, and he dozed, and he had a dream. That same cowherd boy came to him, and the cowherd boy took his hand and he took him into the jungle. And he took him to a certain bush. He said, I reside here and I am suffering. He said, I'm suffering, please rescue me. I want you to rescue me and build me a temple on top of the hill. He said, please wash me with great amounts of water. For many days I have waited for Madhavendrapuri to come because of your ecstatic love. He said, I am Gopal. I lifted Govardhana hill. I am the proprietor here. When the Mohammedans attacked, the priest hid me in this bush and he ran, and I have resided here for many days. So I'm asking you to please rescue me. So when Madhavendrapuri woke up, he just fell down crying because he thought, oh, that was my Lord that came to me and I didn't even recognize him. He was just lamenting and lamenting. Why couldn't I recognize my Lord? But then he immediately remembered the instructions of the Lord, and he went into the townspeople at Govindakun and said, please come, please bring your implements. And they created a path through the forest to this particular bush. And when they actually brought out the Lord's transcendental form, that Lord is worshipped still in Gujarat. Just forget the name of the town now. With great pomp. Anyway, for a while he was here at Govardhana Hill. So they carried him, because he's quite heavy, they carried him and put him on the hill, and they they had a festival, a huge festival, where many people from the surrounding district, first of all they brought flowers, they brought tulsi, they sandalwood, and then they cooked many preparations for the Lord and brought them for his pleasure. So this actually kept on happening. So this is Anakut, and the Lord was very satisfied by having all these wonderful offerings by these townsfolk. And after that, the next village came, and they all cooked, and they brought all their foodstuffs for the Lord. So day after day after day, different villages were coming to the Lord to offer Anakuta ceremony to him, and cooked wonderful things. And then a rich merchant came along and he built a temple, and then every villager around gave a cow. So the deity had many cows, and great worship occurred. And Madhavendrapuri trained up some brahmanas. Whatever brahmanas would come, he would train them in the worship of the deity. So after some time, Madhavendrapuri had another dream, and in that dream, the same Lord appeared, his Lord appeared, and he said to me, I'm still feeling heat, because it was scorching sometimes when I was buried there. Could you please go to Malaya Hill and fetch sandalwood for me? And could you please cool my body with that sandalwood? So Madhavendrapuri was ecstatic to be given that service, and he immediately left to go to Jagannath Puri, and near there is this Malaya Hill where the sandalwood trees were growing. So on the way he visited a temple called Remuna. I don't know if any of you have visited Remuna temple. It's a beautiful little temple in North Orissa. And when he saw that deity, he was very ecstatic, that Gopal deity. I'm sorry, Gopinath deity. His deity is Gopal, this deity was Gopinath. So he was very happy to see Gopinath deity. And he heard from the pujari that actually they offer this very special kheer. And it's really far out. This kheer is very nice. It's different to you. And plus they make it in little earthen pots. It's really wonderful. So this kheer was being offered every day, and Madhavindrapuri was thinking, oh my gosh, this kheer is not made anywhere in the world. I wonder, if I could get a little of this kheer, then I could make this for my Gopal. So he was thinking this as the deity offering was taking place. And then he thought, oh, I'm such an offender. I'm thinking about eating and the Lord's having his offering made. And he was so ashamed that he immediately left. And he went to the vacant marketplace, and he was lamenting that, why did I think like that? How could I think like that? And in that mood of lamentation, he remained chanting. So that night, the pujari had a dream, and in that dream, Gopinath said to him, wake up, I want you to get up. I want you to go, and I want you to find a pot of sweet rice. I have hidden it behind my curtain. You did not see it because of my tricks. I want you to go and get that pot of sweet rice, and I want you to take it to the marketplace and find my devotee who's called Madhavindrapuri and give him this pot of sweet rice. And the pujari was amazed. He got up and he took bath, he went in, and there, hidden behind the curtain, just as the Lord said, was a pot of this wonderful kheer. So he took it to the marketplace, and when he went to the marketplace, of course, it was deserted. And this is what he said. Sorry, just can't remember the exact words. It's very beautiful. He said, Madhavendrapuri, please get up. Let's see. Will he who is called Madhavendrapuri come and take this pot? Gopinath has stolen this pot for you. In the three worlds, you are the most fortunate person. So Madhavindrapuri was amazed, and he went and he took this pot, and he was just so ecstatic. And he ate the sweet rice, and he broke up the pot, and he kept it in his chadar. And then he thought, oh no, everyone's going to hear about this. And he was shunned fame, of course. So he thought, I'm leaving before the morning, otherwise everyone will be here and make a big fuss. So he left, and he walked on till he got to Puri. But we know that Krishna loves his devotees to be glorified. News had already reached Jagannath Puri about Madhavindrapuri. So it was a good thing, actually, because he got so much help then to get this sandalwood and to get it, he was given a servant, a brahmana, he was given expenses, and he was given like letters for the toll collectors along the way so that he wouldn't be harassed at all. So he went back to Ramuna, and of course the pujaris and the devotees were so happy to see him back. And of course the first thing they did was give him some kheer, because he was so famous now. And Gopinath is known, that deity is known as Kheera Chora Gopinath. Gopinath who stole the kheer to this day. So then Madhavendrapuri, that night he had a dream. And in that dream the Lord said, well, actually my body and Gopinath's body is non-different. So I want you to grind this sandalwood along with camphor, and until it is finished, I want you every day to apply it to Gopinath's body, and in that way my body will be cooled. So very happily Madhavendrapuri did that. So he's a very wonderful, special devotee. But one could talk a lot about Sri Madhavendrapuri. But now we're going on to Srinivas Acharya. Srinivas Acharya, when we sing the prayers to the six Goswamis, that is written by Srinivas Acharya. Beautiful prayers to the six Goswamis, because of course he associated with them. So Srinivas Acharya, he appeared in Chakhandi in Bengal. His mother was Lakshmi Priya. His father was called Chaitanya Das because he loved Lord Chaitanya so much. That was his name given to him. So they really wanted to have a son, and Chaitanya Das came to Jagannath Puri to beg Lord Jagannath for a son. Okay, I was going to read a little bit from the Prem Vilas, which is all about the pastimes of Srinivas and Narottam Das Thakur. So meanwhile in Nilachala, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to perform kirtan in the courtyard of the Jagannath temple. He folded his hands before Lord Jagannath and began to cry while uttering the name Srinivas, Srinivas. Lord Jagannath smiled, and so did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then prayed, "O Lord, you fulfilled my desire. By your mercy, Chaitanya Das will have a brilliant son named Srinivas, who will perform many ecstatic pastimes and distribute love of God. O Lord Jagannath, the two brothers Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami will write many books describing the blissful pastimes of Sri Sri Radhakrishna. Srinivas will take these books to Bengal to further expand his distribution of love of Krishna." So then Lord Chaitanya sent a message to Lord Nityananda, and actually he sent a message to everybody about Srinivas. So actually everybody knew that Srinivas was coming to Vrindavan. It was like known amongst the Vaishnava community. But there's one other page I'd like to read about Sanatana Goswami. That night, Lord Chaitanya appeared before Sanatana Goswami in a dream. And he said, "One of my devotees will soon appear in a Brahmana's family. This devotee will be sober and full of all good qualities. O Sanatana, you are non-different from me. You will carry on my mission with the help of this devotee who will be named Srinivas." Sanatana Goswami was awestruck after seeing the Lord in his dream. The next morning he disclosed this incident to the assembly of devotees. "Listen, everyone, a Brahmana's son who will be named Srinivas, he will preach the glories of the pastimes of Sri Sri Radhakrishna in Bengal. The Lord constantly relishes these transcendental pastimes along with his associates, such as Swarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Roy, and he has empowered Rupa Goswami to write about them. The Lord will cause Srinivas to appear in Bengal after his disappearance. I hope you will be able to see him in due course of time. It requires a great deal of good fortune to meet a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, so I think that I'm not so fortunate. If all of you are fortunate, then by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, you will certainly see this devotee very soon." And then there's another time when all the devotees had a dream and they saw Srinivas appear at Chaitanya Das's house. So this is all very it became sort of public knowledge among the Vaishnavas about that Srinivas would come and that he would preach the glories of the Lord and take the Goswami's books into Bengal. So as a child, Srinivas was very brilliant, very beautiful, golden. Once he appeared, the whole village became auspicious, everybody became joyful, and he was an extraordinary child. He was not interested in any mundane studies. He just wanted to chant the name of Radha and Krishna. He loved to preach. His parents were thinking, "Oh no, is he going to take sannyas?" They were very worried. But Srinivas was, at this time he was very dutiful. When his father passed away, he was still very young, and he took his mother to be taken care of. But he had an urgent desire to preach. So, the mother went to Yajigram. So Srinivas met Narahari Sakar, who was one of the great devotees of Lord Chaitanya, and he immediately wanted to take initiation from him because he's so exalted. But Narahari Sakar said, "No, your guru is Gopal Bhatta Goswami." So everybody knew his fate. Everybody knew he was supposed to take Gopal Bhatta Goswami as his guru. And then actually that night, Lord Chaitanya appeared to Srinivas in a dream, and he said to him, "Your guru is Gopal Bhatta Goswami in Vrindavan. You should go there. Go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Gopal Bhatta Goswami." So in the meantime, Srinivas had two desires. He wanted to go to Jagannath Puri, that was number one. And number two, he wanted to study Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit, because he knew Gadadhar Pandit was still there. Lord Chaitanya had left, Lord Nityananda had left, Gadadhar Pandit was still there. So he went to Jagannath Puri and he asked if he could study. They began to study, but unfortunately, Sri Gadadhar Pandit's Srimad Bhagavatam had so many tears cried onto it that you actually could hardly read it. So then he asked Srinivas Acharya to go to Narahari Sakar and get a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he went there, back to Yajagram, and he received the terrible news that in the meantime Gadadhar Pandit had left in separation from Lord Chaitanya. So he was heartbroken because he had these plans that he wanted to study under him. However, he decided to go to Navadvip first. And it's kind of interesting, the whole thing, like, you know, he got this instruction from Lord Chaitanya, go to Vrindavan, but first of all, things had to happen before he went, because really, without the mercy of the Vaishnavas, we can't achieve love of God. So it just so happened that by his travels, he met so many wonderful associates of Lord Chaitanya, and he got their blessings, one after the other, gave their blessings. So when he went to Navadvip, he met Ishan, who was still the servant of Vishnupriya. He was old at that time, but he still served Vishnupriya. So he took Srinivas to meet Vishnupriya. So Srinivas was like shivering in ecstasy to meet Vishnupriya. And her daily pastime was she would chant for 9 hours, and she would, every time she chanted one Hare Krishna mantra, the full mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He would take 1 grain of rice, she would take 1 grain of rice and keep it aside. And then at the end of the day, whatever rice she'd collected from all her chanting, she would cook and eat. That was all. She was so renounced. So she actually, she met her, and she blessed him that I want you to go first of all to Shantipur and Kadadahar, and then on to Vrindavan Dham. So when he went to Shantipur, he met Advaita Acharya, and Advaita Acharya had left 3 years before. So he came back to meet Srinivas. So Srinivas was very ecstatic to meet Sri Advaita Acharya. So he embraced him and he gave him his blessings, and he told him, please don't tell anybody. Do not tell anybody that you've met me. So then he went on to Kadadaha to meet Janavamata, and at that time he met Sita Mata, the wife of Advaita Acharya, and she also gave blessings. She fed him and blessed him. So in Kadadaha he danced with joy, and Virabhadra, because he was going to meet Janavamata, so Virabhadra was sitting with Janavamata, and he started to shiver in ecstasy. And they were saying there's some great personality. They could feel that some great personality had come there to Kadadaha. And then we know who it was that brought Srinivas in to see Janavamata. Parameshwar Das Thakur. He brought in Srinivas. So she was very happy to see him, and he was so ecstatic to see Janavamata. So she knew everything that had happened. She knew why he had appeared, and she knew that he had come to distribute love of Godhead. Because who had told her? Lord Nityananda. He had told her that Srinivas would be appearing in order to distribute love of Godhead. So then she sent him to Abhiram Das Thakur. Abhiram Das Thakur had this magic whip. When he whipped somebody, they would develop love of Godhead. So everyone was like lining up to get whipped by Abhiram Thakur. But you had to be deserving. You couldn't just go and get whipped. A mundane person couldn't get whipped and get... So he actually got tested. Anyway, it was a long story. So off he went to Vrindavan. It took him 1 month to reach Vrindavan, and he was pretty skinny by the time he got to Vrindavan, because he got to Mathura, and then he heard, first of all he went to Mathura, and then he heard some Brajavasis talking, and they were saying, oh, how can we bear it? Sanatana Goswami has left us a few months ago, and now Rupa Goswami has left us. And for Srinivas, all he was trying to do was meet these Goswamis, and they'd left, so he was like stricken. He was just totally heartbroken. And he lamented very pitifully. So anyway, all the devotees that were still there were awaiting him. They all knew he was coming. And he did meet Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami was so loving towards him. And he knew that he had to initiate him, because everybody knew that was what had to happen. And of course that happened. So he took Gopal Bhatta Goswami as his guru. And of course it's Gopal Bhatta Goswami who had the deity of Radharaman, who came today also. So it's all, there are connections. So Jiva Goswami was the Shiksha Guru of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He went every day, along with Narottam Das and Shyamananda Prabhu. They went every day to study from Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami loved them, and they had such a beautiful relationship. So they had their own gurus. Narottam Das Thakur, of course, had Lokanath Goswami in Vrindavan. But they studied under Jiva Goswami, and they had a very close bond with him. And they studied all the Goswamis' writings, so it was real nectar for them. And of course, because they had pure hearts, it all just came alive, everything. They were so absorbed constantly in these wonderful teachings of Jiva Goswami. So then these books had to be taken across to Bengal, and Narottam Das, Srinivas and Shyamananda Prabhu, because Srinivas and Narottam Das were from Bengal, and because Shyamananda was from Orissa, they were requested to take these books by Jiva Goswami to Bengal. So it's a long trip that they had. They had a bullock cart, they had 15 guards, Jiva Goswami personally packed all those books and covered them up so that they wouldn't get affected by weather. And off they set to take them to Bengal. They got as far as Vishnupur, and they were robbed, because the local king had an astrologer who told him that there's great treasure coming in this cart. And he was a rascal. He used to rob people, and he took these books because he'd been told they were a treasure. So you can't imagine really how distraught those three devotees were. And then they immediately had to write a letter to the Goswamis to say what had happened. And then they were distraught. All these books, the lifelong writings of the Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, it can't be. And Krishnadas Kaviraj was so upset, and he actually took his Siksha Guru was Raghunath Das. He took Raghunath Das's feet upon his chest, because they lived at Radhakund, and on the banks of Radhakund, he, praying for the mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, he left at that time. So it was a big, a huge event. And in the end, Shyamananda said to the other two, you go on. So Narottam Das and Shyamananda, in great separation from Srinivas and feeling distraught because they couldn't fulfill their mission, off they went to Bengal. And once they arrived there, Shyamananda went to Orissa. So Shyamananda preached all through Orissa, and Narottam preached all through Bengal, but Srinivas was stuck there in Vishnupur. And there's a long story. He eventually went to the king's court, and he was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from that king's guru, but the reciter of that Srimad Bhagavatam was not doing a good job at all. He was distorting things, and Srinivas couldn't bear it. So he spoke out. And in the end, that devotee, who actually became Vyasacharya, but that devotee said, all right, you speak then. So Srinivas spoke, and it was so enchanting. The king was enchanted. Everybody was completely enchanted to hear his beautiful explanation of Vaishnava teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So nobody kind of could understand, because they'd been hearing these bogus teachings for so long, and they'd sort of just been doing it for some sense of piety, but suddenly their hearts were touched because Srinivas Acharya was so pure and he presented the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam so wonderfully. So that king actually surrendered to Srinivas Acharya and he became his disciple. And so did the spiritual, the Brahmana who'd been reciting, he also became his disciple. And that king really loved Srinivas and he helped him like anything, and it's described that many of his citizens became Vaishnavas. So Srinivas Acharya went to Bengal, he got back the books, he was so ecstatic to see the books inside the king's palace untouched, and he let the others know, went to Bengal, and they preached all through Bengal, distributed these books, had them copied and distributed them. It's not like now when you can just go to a printer and get it all printed. Everything had to be hand copied. But these books and the teachings were distributed by Srinivas, Narottam, and Shyamananda Prabhus. So they were like the second generation. You had you had Lord Chaitanya, you had the six Goswamis, and then the next generation with these three who preached through Bengal and Orissa. So it's very wonderful to hear the glories of a devotee, because sometimes Krishna may become a little bit blasé if we're glorifying him because he's all perfect and he knows it. But if we glorify his devotees, Krishna immediately becomes captive. So if you want to capture Krishna, you talk about his pure devotees, because he will come wherever you're glorifying the pure devotees. So it's very nice to talk about these great devotees, and I thank you very much. And if anybody has anything to add, or
Hare Krishna, lovely class, thank you. My question is, you're talking about the first saint and that Krishna was in his heart. I was wondering if you can explain that more, because I understand Krishna's in all of our hearts.
Krishna is in all of our hearts. He resides in the hearts of every living entity, and he travels with us. He's so kind. He sits quietly travelling with us life after life after life. He gives us reminders, but unfortunately we usually block that off until, by Prabhupada's grace, the devotee's grace, we get to hear about Krishna and, can take up devotional service. But he's there in his Vishnu form. It's described, like, I forget here to here, I think it is, the size, and he sits within the heart. But of course that's going to be comparative. He's not that big in the heart of a cockroach or So he sits in the heart of everybody. So the fact that Krishna personally appears, see, we often hear that, and Prabhupada said that, prepare in your heart a place for Krishna to come. Prabhupada used to say that. Through our chanting we should prepare a place. But what does that mean? Because Krishna is already in our heart. But that form is that super soul Vishnu form. And at a certain point, when we awaken our love for Krishna, then Krishna himself takes up residence in the body of the pure devotee. Yeah.
I have another question. You were speaking of Janaka Mata and how she was very renounced and only ate the grains of...
Oh yeah, that was Vishnupriya.
Oh, Vishnupriya, please forgive me. Thank you for the correction. So I would like to know more about renunciation. What's the benefits of renouncing? That's a heavy renunciation. So should we be trying to renounce? Just please speak something on renunciation.
Okay. So we're talking about Lord Chaitanya's consort here, Lakshmi Devi, and all these devotees, they're come for Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we are not in their category. So we've come from a very dirty place and we're trying to purify ourselves. So Prabhupada, didn't really push too much these austerities. Our austerities are chant 16 rounds, perform devotional service, follow the 4 regulative principles, study my books. There are austerities. And, for a Kali Yuga mind, I was just hearing a lecture Prabhupada was saying yesterday, he said it's not easy to control the mind. Everybody has a difficult mind, So it's not like that we put ourselves in the... we don't imitate these exalted devotees. We respect them, we follow their teachings, but we follow what Srila Prabhupada's given us. So to artificially renounce, and we saw it in those early days a lot, so many devotees fell away. Rosarani, you can attest to that. There was a lot of sort of artificial renunciation going on, and those devotees had so much trouble because we're not at that stage. So if we get to a particular stage and there's some inspiration to decrease our eating or whatever, then fair enough. But generally, Srila Prabhupada just wanted us, not just, he used to say, what is the difficulty? But he wanted us to follow this process. So anything extra, we have to wait until we've got that love for Krishna. When you've got love for Krishna, you can do anything. But while you don't, while we're trying to get that love, then we follow the process. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Jai. Hare Krishna. Vaishnav Thakur ki Jai.